and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu, Cele. Well, as you can tell today, we're really coming to you from a different location, the heartbeat of Soweto, which is Maponya Mall, where the South African Savings Institute has launched its inaugural conference with several stakeholders also participating in these talks. Now, for many of you who might not be aware, there's a certain informal savings culture which is rife in South Africa and has a long stemming history. With just under 50 billion rand and exchanging hands within the Stokvel circles, we're going to get more perspective now on understanding the informal savings market and, more importantly, how to bridge the gap and the divide between informal savings markets as well as financial institutions. For this, I've got the man who is at the helm of the National Stokvels Association of South Africa. I hope I said it correctly, NASASA.
NASASA,
Perfect.
The National Stokvel Association.
Thank you so much, Andile Mazwai, for joining us this evening. Maybe let's take two steps back, because many people who watch the show will identify you from your corporate activities in the past, but the move to Stokvels and the type of mandate that you're trying to push with NASASA, what does it entail?
From stockbroking to Stokvels.
Yeah.
It's not that far apart. It's not that far apart. The mandate is one which I really am blessed with. We did not invent Stokvels. Stokvels are a social phenomenon. If you remove the name, it's a group of people who come together every month or so, put their money together for a purpose. Maybe they're going on a golf tour. Maybe they're going to buy groceries. Maybe it's for funeral benefits. Maybe it's for a family holiday. Whatever that common reason is, that is what binds those people, and they're known to each other. That then is what we call a Stokvel.
Andile, maybe if you can quote a few numbers for us, because there was a panel discussion which took place earlier today, and I think a lot of audience members were actually surprised by how vibrant and what's the word that I'm looking for, but basically there's a lot of money exchanging hands within the Stokvel environment.
So now that you've bought the idea that a Stokvel is a normal thing for people to get together, we meet people, and many of them say, the ones on this side of the M1, on the Sandton side, say, Stokvel, I don't belong to a Stokvel. Have you ever gone on a holiday with friends? Yes. Did you put money together? Yes. So that's a Stokvel. Oh, I didn't realize. So those are more on the periphery, those that have got a short lifespan. So you can't get to a definitive number of how many Stokvel groups are there. The research that was done by UCT reckons there are more than 800,000 groups in South Africa. That's more than 11.5 million people who belong to Stokvels, and they save about 50 billion rand a year. So it's both 50 billion changing hands as well as 50 billion under the proverbial mattress, because many Stokvels by their nature are going to be paying that money out in the cycle of a year.
I'm happy you touched on that divide being the M1 highway in Johannesburg, which everyone's familiar with, because it almost seems as though the objectives of both these investment clubs versus Stokvels are not the same. There's more consumption-driven savings where at the end of the year people go out and buy groceries or throw parties or have different objectives versus those who want to save and invest for the long term. Are we finding that there's a challenge in changing the mindset of those people in places like Soweto where we are today?
I think it's an interesting phenomenon that we see. It's not a case of changing, but rather extending the mindset. We often, in our suits, talk about investments, but you can't invest if you haven't saved. So that's the missing link. Whereas on the other side of the highway in Alex, what guys have gotten right and what Stokvels do very well is saving. Saving is natural, saving is normal, but it's saving for the purpose of groceries. And then by extension, we say, you've done well to save for groceries at the end of the year. How about extending the lifespan of your group to beyond December? How about converting your savings into investments? And that's what people are actually responding to well, because they themselves feel it. They say it was great, we've got 150,000 rand in our bank account, we spend it and then, you're deflated. And January comes, no one's got money. Feb comes and you start at zero. And it's natural and normal for a group to say, what if we didn't have to start at zero? What if we saved a portion and put it away in an investment?
Does this go back, though, to the offerings that are available from financial services institutions?
Yes and no. It's a language thing, not just vernac language, but when you talk about investments, then you say, what's your risk profile?
Yeah.
Now, what's your risk profile? I don't know what my risk profile is. It's just a foreign way to talk to people. And it's a natural language which is used in the investment world. Rather, when we engage people, we ask it in a different way and say, when do you intend to use this money? I know, we're going to use it in December. So you are short term, therefore you are risk averse. There's your translation, duration and risk. So it's a case of speaking to people in a manner in which they're going to understand, rather than just hitting people with jargon or an assumption that they're going to engage you in your own language.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works now, and it's fine if you don't want to answer this question, but is there a certain level of distrust that we often find between these financial institutions and members of Stokvels who often feel that their bank charges, their charges for withdrawals, we slap with taxes? I don't want to put my money there. I'd rather keep it within our circle and charge each other 30% interest for lending that money.
Now, I'm going to give some free advice to the bankers. It's not a little bit of mistrust. We belong to a group. And because you're the cleverest one, you've got a fancy money show and a fancy channel, we're going to give you the money and you're the treasurer. And we're all going to give you 1,000 Rand. 5 of us give you 1,000 Rand, 5,000 Rand of our group money, and you're going to take it to the bank, of course. When we meet next month, what's the first question we ask you? Where's our money? And you take out a statement. Does that statement read 5,000 Rand?
Nope.
What does it read?
A lot, 4,000
something.
Yeah.
And we say to you, Gugu, what did you do with our money? We're looking to you. Now, are you really equipped to answer for the bank and explain that this charge was for this benefit, and in fact, we've actually done well because the cost versus what we don't trust you. You've just given up your trust with us. And are you willing to bleed for your financial institution? And that's what the banks are not hearing. They can explain the charges, but you can't. And for as long as you can't explain to our satisfaction, we are going to be unhappy with you, and you won't make the mistake next month of taking that money to the bank. Why would you do that? You won't do that to yourself.
Keep it in my safe or even under my bed or wherever in my house, but it's not going to the bank account.
Because you can't explain what happened to the money.
Having said that though, Andile, and with your background, as you mentioned, in stockbroking and now heading up NASASA, what possible solutions are you finding and what kind of feedback are you getting in your engagements with financial institutions?
There are a few things that people ask for, which the industry struggles to understand. I gave you the example on fees, and it's about understanding what I'm paying for in a way that I can explain to other people without looking like I stole people's money. Problem number one. On the other side of saving is debt. I'll give this as an example because I think your audience will appreciate it, because when I heard it, thought I knew where the ending was going, but I had my eyes open. We're speaking to a group that had some money, about 300 or 1,000, and they wanted to invest the money. So they're very risk averse and they want their capital guaranteed. So immediately you're thinking a money market instrument. So we tell them that we can get them a good rate of 6.5%. So the guy asks us to explain. We say no, for every 100 Rand you give, in a year's time you're going to get 106 Rand and 50 cents. And the guy pauses and he says, so I'm going to get 106 Rand 50 plus the 100 that I gave you. And we were like, no, that's not 6.5%.
Yeah.
And he says, but when we borrow money, it feels like that.
Financial education clearly is
when we borrow money, it feels like that. People are borrowing from micro lenders. What are the rates that micro lenders levy? Now you're speaking to a person to say, when you deposit your money, you get this. When you borrow your money, you pay that. How do you make a person understand why the gap is that far apart? Why is it that someone who is a good saver can't be treated as a good borrower? That is the actual essence of the question. I have shown discipline, I'm able to save, Yet when I borrow, you treat me as though I am a bad credit risk, and you levy me with such high rates that I cannot reconcile the difference between my deposit rate and my borrowing rate.
Just to close off with Andile, unfortunately we're running out of time. The concept and element of financial education, because clearly it does seem as though that also sits at the heart of this issue, where that consumer can understand where to go to get appropriate debt, where they'll be measured, as you say, on their positive or negative qualities as a payer.
Yeah, it's a very important one. And unfortunately, every single company is guilty of the same thing. I call it education, but it's really product sales. And people can tell the difference. The moment you start selling me something, my mind switches into defensive mode. You need to genuinely say to people, I am here to tell you left from right, good from bad, up from down. And trust that that person will, once equipped with sufficient information, will make the right decision that's appropriate for themselves.
Andile, thank you so much for your time today. We certainly wish you the best in your endeavors, from a stockbroker to Stokvels, and we look forward to getting in touch with you.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And that's where we leave it for Personal Finance this evening, coming to you from Soweto in Maponya Mall, where we're getting insights on Stokvels and naturally bridging that divide there, financial education at the root of it all. A big thank you once more to my guest, Andile Mazwai, who's the Chief Executive Officer of NASASA. Be sure to get in touch with us via our social media networking platforms, on Twitter at CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410, or myself at Gugulethu on Twitter. Until next time, take care everyone.